Where's this survivor? What?
He's the survivor.
From the television show. The survivor.
I was over in Australia.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Seinfeld. So here we are in a region of Australia where out of the world's 10 most deadly snakes, 9 of them inhabit this region. It was harrowing. You come across a taipan on the trail, you get bit, you're dead. 30 minutes flat.
I'll tell you, that's a very interesting story. Let me tell you, I was in a concentration camp. You never even suffered 1 minute in your life compared to what I went through.
Look, I'm saying we spent 42 days trying to survive. We had very little rations, no snacks.
Snacks? What are you talking snacks? We didn't eat, sometimes for a week, for a month.
Don't.
We ate nothing. I went from home.
I mean, I couldn't even work out when I was over there. They certainly didn't have a gym.
What?
I mean, I wore my sneakers out, and then the next thing you know, I've got a pair of flip-flops.
Flip-flops, huh?
Have you even seen the show?
Did you ever see our show? It was called the Holocaust.
Look, all I know is I was damn close to that $1 million, all right? And the whole time, everyone's backstabbing me and undermining me, trying to get me kicked off the show.
You don't know
aggravate yourself
nothing
here.
about survival. I'm a survivor.
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 It's Brittany, bitch. And the Iraq, everywhere, like, such as.
I'm supposed to be the franchise player, and we're in here talking about practice.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Out, Charlie! Out!
Our next door neighbors are foreign countries.
I call upon all nations to do everything they can to stop these terrorist killers. Thank you. Now watch this drive.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Remember Shuffle. My name is Ben. With me as always is my co-host Giordano.
Hey kid, loan me your socks, huh? Come on, I played fair. Loan me your socks, kid.
And today we are finally dipping our toe into the water of reality television. We are discussing Survivor.
That's right. Oh my god, what a treat.
Yes.
So, okay, cards on the table. This is sacred, what happens here in Podcast Council.
Yeah.
We're preparing for episode 100, which we want to do on The Apprentice. But it's tough. We're like, we got to talk about the first Mark Burnett show first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Survivor. Or like first popular Mark Burnett show, as we'll see. So I did this kind of as a chore to set up The Apprentice. But Survivor is such a better show than The Apprentice. My God, I was compelled to watch so much more of this than I intended to.
Yes, I was also dreading this topic because it's so big. I think we've said on the show before, doing TV is hard because there's so much content. Here's a show with 50 seasons.
50 American seasons.
Yeah.
Like over 230 international seasons.
Yeah, how do you even begin to approach this topic? And so I prioritize reading books on Survivor, and I kind of left watching it to the last minute a little bit. But oh my God, once I turned it on, I got it. It clicked. I wanted to watch more of these absolutely incompetent narcissists attempt to survive on an island. It was incredible.
You know, obviously, I had watched this when it came out. It was such a insane cultural tour de force. Like, you could not get away from this show in its first season. Everyone was fascinated by it. 125 million people watched the finale of the first season. The most watched summer series since Sonny and Cher in 1973. The first 11 seasons were all rated amongst the top 10 most watched shows. CBS made a fortune off of this show. Of the seasons where we know how much money they made, first season made $53 million, season 7 made $72 million, nominated for 64 Emmys.
And that number is small when you compare it to something like Sopranos. I always compare something to Sopranos on this pod, but what you need to remember is that at the beginning of the decade, the cultural tastemakers-in-chief said that reality TV did not qualify. So it was only at the very end of the decade, like 2008, 2009, that they invented categories for reality TV to win. So bearing in mind that Sopranos had a 10-year head start, Survivor has won something like half as many Emmys as Sopranos.
I have a memory that's crystallized in my head watching this show with my parents when it came out. You know, my parents, they loved to host growing up. And so for the finale, I recall so much like the party that they threw to watch the Survivor finale. We'll talk about this later, but there was this thing around the year 2000 with being obsessed with like tiki aesthetics, right? You know, they built this like tiki bar and everybody had their tiki clothes on. I'm sure I had a Hawaiian shirt on.
Back before the Hawaiian shirt meant that you were a member of a white nationalist militia, and it just meant that you were here to have a good time.
Oh, I remember the tiki torches my parents had bought and like put out everywhere.
Oh, tiki torches too, also white nationalists now.
Yeah, I know. I remember you came over for this Survivor party, you know, in the year 2000. Both of us, I guess, 9 years old.
Yep. My parents would not let me watch Survivor because they thought that the show had bad values because it was about lying and dissembling and manipulating. And in a true survival contest, you would actually want to collaborate. So this is teaching you the opposite message of collaboration and cooperation.
That's so adorable.
It wasn't the swearing. It wasn't the nudity. It wasn't the homophobia or whatever.
Right.
It was that.
So it's a real like Marge Simpson-ass move to be like, that show has bad values. I don't like that they vote people off. They should vote to have people stay.
But yeah, this show, it is impossible to overstate how important it was because it blows the door open for reality TV. We will spend a lot of this episode talking broadly about reality TV, but the reason reality TV is significant, I know you, listener, probably have discerning tastes if you listen to our podcast. You're probably not a big reality TV show head, but it is the most significant TV innovation of the 2000s. The second most important being the invention of prestige TV, as represented by Sopranos, Mad Men, Wire, Breaking Bad, whatever. But all those dramas are over. Survivor is in its 50th season. Survivor is eternal. It has outlasted, outwitted, and outplayed the prestige dramas.
Outprofited, for sure. Yeah, I mean, who do you think has the more lasting impression on TV? Survivor or The Sopranos? I mean, it's hard not to say Survivor, given that it has changed the basic economics of television more than any other show.
Yeah, here's like another comparison point for the massive footprint that reality TV had in general and Survivor in particular. Giordano said 125 people watched the finale of Survivor Season 1. That's 1 in 3 Americans. Only 11.9 people watched the season finale of Sopranos. So like 1/11th as many people. So
it's so funny that we keep saying that The Sopranos is like the wine track of TV because I don't feel like most people would interpret it that way, right? Like to me, like 6 Feet Under or something is the wine track of TV. Like my claim on this podcast is that Sopranos occupies simultaneously the wine and beer tracks. But I get your point that this is an order of magnitude more viewers than the greatest show on TV, which occupied both tracks, you know?
Yeah. So if we have a beer track and a wine track, I think your wine track is, your prestige dramas. Your beer track is your network TV. Your beer track, I would still say, is like scripted network drama. Your House MDs, your Bing Bong theories. And then reality TV is like a shandy. It's half beer, half
grog.
Juice. It's grog. It's mead.
It's grog track.
It's grog track. It'll get you drunk if you drink 30 of them. You bought it at the beginning of the summer, and come November, you still have some of them in your fridge, and you don't know how they got there. That is the track that reality TV is. So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to do an overview of reality TV. We're going to talk about our characters behind the scenes, on camera, on the couch watching. We'll talk about the mechanics of Survivor. We'll do a summary of season 1. Then, as always, we will close out with our themes and big ideas and our echoes in the culture.
And a little bibliography for this episode. You know, Ben and I always love to find some books on the topics. We read a very good book, or at least the Survivor chapters of a very good book called Cue the Sun
by Emily Nussbaum.
Yeah, and then there's also a book solely about Survivor called The Endless Gaze, which sometimes was extremely good and very compelling, and at other times kind of aimless. But all in all, that second one probably a better read if you love Survivor.
Yeah, it's pretty grad school coded. Every chapter is based off of a theme. The chapter on colonialism and the imagery that they use is very, very good. The chapters on sex and race are very good, but it's so grad school coded that there's a chapter on Walter Benjamin and the mirror and film and stage and fascism, and it barely connects to Survivor. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. You read the fucking Frankfurt School, Sally Tillsdale. Okay, so here's your reality TV overview. The first major boom of reality TV in America in the early 2000s was partially the result of a writer's strike in the summer of 2001, though that strike obviously postdates Survivor. But just talk about stars aligning. Survivor comes out in 2000, it breaks open the field, cultural juggernaut, then a writer's strike encourages all the other networks to get in on the action even more.
Think about the state of TV at the end of this decade, right? Where it's like, yeah, the History Channel is showing a nonstop Pawn Stars rerun, right? Like, it all comes back to this moment in the early 2000s where, like, everyone is seeing Survivor get 125 million viewers without having to pay any writers or actors.
Yep.
The market forces here are so diabolical, right? When it comes to the production of reality TV. Like, you don't have to pay any actors. No one is in a union, right? Like, they do have a shot at $1 million, so I guess it's a different kind of pay. But the $1 million is also sort of like a marketing highlight, right, for the people making it, right? You can't brag normally about how much you're paying your actors in a scripted drama. You know, that's not really one of the pulls for people watching. But if you were to tell someone why they should watch Survivor, they have a chance at $1 million.
What would you do for $1 million? Come see what these people will do for $1 million.
You really get a sense from these books about how the market forces are different in a reality show versus like a traditional scripted show, because people are willing to be there for exposure. Like, they're much more manipulatable, right? There's no reality TV actors union. You know, you can get them to sign NDAs that are so draconian by any other standards. People who are on the show are never allowed to talk about it, are never allowed to profit from it. Like, imagine you go on Survivor and then you want to write a column for your like local newspaper that reviews new episodes of the show Survivor. Nope, not allowed to do that. You will be sued by CBS.
Yes, exactly. It's not just an NDA. Hey, don't spoil the show, right? You got voted off. We're still filming it. You're sequestered in the resort. Don't spoil it. The things that contestants agree to in these contracts is absolutely fucking wild. CBS owns your name and likeness for at least 3 years after the show ends. And because it's reality TV, it's not a character. It's you. It's you.
And it's not even like a you that might be true, right? CBS can portray you however they want by editing you. And then you can't even speak publicly about how you're being portrayed as yourself.
Yes. CBS has the power, quoting the book here, to narrate the lives of its contestants in any manner it chooses, and contestants are not allowed to offer an alternative narrative of their experience.
Wow.
And they will take you to court. And you sign away the ability for CBS to just make shit up about you. Like, one of these contracts got leaked around 2010. It was like Pentagon Papers big. The network is permitted to create a domain name for players and a fictionalization of the player to be used as the network sees fit, including for a, quote, humorous or satirical effect, and these versions of the player belong to CBS forever. The contract says that you may be the subject to having information, quote, of a personal, private, intimate, surprising, defamatory, disparaging, embarrassing, or unfavorable nature that may be factual and or fictional broadcast on television. When they make them do psychological tests and lie detectors, those are allowed to be published by the network. And anything you create on the show, from a song to a pose to your own words to a catchphrase that you invent, is given to CBS in perpetuity and is said in known and not yet invented media.
Holy shit. Yeah, I never thought I'd say this, but these reality television people need a union.
Yeah, yes, 100%.
You know, it's funny because regular actors and writers, you know, have union rules that go back to like the 30s. There's a long-standing tradition of established labor principles that, I mean, are not great, but at least have some kind of historical standing. And this is great. It's the new frontier for reality TV. Like, this is a whole new thing. So we're not bound to some of the labor restrictions from the past.
Yes. The biggest chunk of TV labor that happens on reality TV is in post-production, in editing down the 25 hours of raw footage that it takes to make one 40-minute episode of Survivor. And that part of the TV creation process is not unionized, right? They found the one ununionized part of the whole process and focused on that.
Mm-hmm. We'll get back to this later. And so let's just talk about like the nature of drama and storytelling in reality TV.
Yeah. So the appeal of the storytelling in reality TV is that you are seeing a version of reality. I think Sally Tisdale put it this way. If you enjoy the act of people watching, this is the best people watching there is. It's the appeal of seeing real people, in quotes, in the real world, in a sense. We get to be voyeurs.
Yeah, the people you're watching are regular people with regular jobs. Everyone from a lunch lady to a gravedigger is on this show speaking in ways that like are not optimal or make sense, but like by virtue of the fact that it's coming from this person, it makes it a little honest in a way, even though there's like a ton of editing happening. But I think there's just like a different standard when you're watching real people for how you treat dialogue, right? Like think about a stand-up comic delivering a joke that they've written beforehand versus a stand-up comic doing crowd work. When you're watching a stand-up comic do crowd work, there's a lot of leeway you'll allow them in terms of the joke quality. Because you know it's happening on the spot. And that's kind of how I see reality TV. Where like, is the drama as good? No. But, you know, you're giving it a little bit of credit for the fact that there's no preparation here.
Yeah, and because they are average people, you get to project yourself onto them. It got me when I was watching Survivor. I was thinking to myself, like, how would I do in this challenge? What would my strategy be if I were here? It's all about selling spontaneity, right? Anything can happen. It's unscripted. It's, of course, a fantasy that you're seeing people as they really are because it's so highly edited, but we like to buy into that fantasy. It's completely open-ended. Like, Jordan, when you describe your family hosting a party for this event, it did give Super Bowl vibes back in the day. We want to see who wins in this unscripted television event.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, just on the topic of editing, 25 hours to make 40 minutes lets you tell whatever kind of story you want, especially if you know the ending ahead of time. And one crazy element that I found of this editing is that they deliberately edit out dialogue that is too newsy or too topical, as well as slang that's too of the moment, so that these episodes can have a weirdly long shelf life. I mean, I watched those episodes from 2000, and there wasn't all that much, except for the casual homophobia, that really signposted it as being of the year 2000.
Yeah, so let's keep going on this topic of like reality versus drama.
Mark Burnett, the creator, is quoted by a producer as saying that what they were going for in Survivor was dramality. It's neither pure reality, nor is it purely scripted. It is, quoting him here, reality with a story. Contestants playing a character based on themselves, playing through a loose plot outline with an unknown end. It's a hologram of real life. If you are curious about humans and humanity, this is the place to go. Because this is a performance where people are pretending to be real, they think they're being real, they're challenged to be real, and maybe they failed to be real. It's not true candid. It's not a hidden camera show because they all know where the cameras are. So there's an element of performance to it. Some kind of weird mix between reality and drama.
You are yourself, of course, but like the Heisenberg principle, the fact that you're being observed will, one, naturally change yourself. And then two, the fact that you're also trying to win the game changes yourself as well.
Yes, the difference between you when you're interacting with the other castaways versus you in the video confessional.
And there's a lot of strategy, and we'll talk more about strategy later, but the nature of the drama is typically based around trying to win the game, get along with others. Imagine like a game of werewolf or mafia, right? Think about like the type of drama that can come up in that game as people swear to each other something that they may be lying about.
A lot of broken oaths on Survivor, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And the show knows this. In almost every season, someone will say the line, perception is reality. And you can just imagine them tenting their fingers like it's something very deep that they're saying.
Just one quick bit before we move on to Survivor itself. I think a lot of this reality television boom is also just the natural result of a reflection of the technological innovations that are happening during this decade. You know, we talked in our 2000 election about how following candidates on the road and being able to transmit your news stories was possible for the first time around here. We read that David Foster Wallace book.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what's happening with reality TV, right? Is like cameras used to be something that you needed like an entire truck to move around. And now we're in an era where like you can get the lighting decent enough and have digital cameras that are light enough to use in a location like this.
Yep.
And it makes it possible to make a show about it.
Yeah, the cameras that they put in their shelters, the tiny little stable ones that don't need a crew, are the size of a lipstick tube.
Wow.
So being able to make this show look as good as it is contingent on these advancements in technology, making stuff smaller, making stuff digital, yada, yada, yada.
Let's talk about Mark Burnett. He's not the creator of The Survivor. The creator of Survivor is this guy named David Parsons, who we'll talk about in a moment. But Mark Burnett is one of the idols, you could say, of reality TV. I mean, this guy made Survivor, The Apprentice, Shark Tank, The Voice, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? Some of the largest cultural products of the last 25 years. Net worth of $500 million. There's this guy named Charlie Parsons who's like a Gen X, like alternative media guy who's working for the BBC during the 90s, who makes like a show called Expedition Robinson. You know, Survivor is actually from Sweden. So thank you, Sweden, for this show, apparently.
I want to add just one thing about this Swedish reality TV show, Expedition Robinson, that first started. The first guy to get voted off the island on the Swedish version tragically committed suicide. And he said, they edited me to make me look like a loser, make me look like a fool. He was a Balkan immigrant to Sweden, stepped in front of a train. Very sad, very tragic. They talked about not releasing the show at all, but eventually did. The tragedy obviously made a whole bunch of buzz around the show. I just like to imagine these British and American just fucking buzzards being like, this is the show for us. Jeff Probst even said the tragic suicide related to the show made him more interested in it because they said, oh, this is real, this is intense, or what have you. Just bloodsuckers.
What a strange, sort of canary in the coal mine that like this show, the forerunner of reality TV show, in its proto form, the first person to ever be eliminated from it would commit suicide as a result of their experience on the show. If that's not a bad omen for like the nature of this art form over the next 25 years, I don't know what is.
Yep.
But Mark Burnett is able to buy the idea and finally get it on like a major network. He was a guy who was participating in these like 90s sort of wilderness retreats and races and thinking, oh, this could be a great TV show. He is British, by the way. He's a British paratrooper who I believe fought in some of the Balkan wars.
Falkland, I think.
Oh, in the Falkland.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, hero. Yeah, he grew up in London, the child of working class factory workers, joined the British Army. He moves to America, and this is a guy, he's kind of annoying to listen to. He loves the concept of the American dream. He became a nanny in LA for some bigwig, and then parlayed that into a career in media, you know, selling t-shirts on the Venice Boardwalk and then being a television producer.
Yeah, he's a guy who has written 2 memoirs that are largely identical in many points. Here's a quote from the man in his own words. He's waxing philosophical on the transformative power of a season of Survivor. He said, quote, "The players are fighting for their existence, their mental health, their self-respect, their money. If ever a device were invented to help men and women gauge their caliber of character, Survivor is it."
Oh my God.
This guy takes his shit way too serious. He's also known for his style of quiet micromanagement. And there's a story from the book where during an early season of Survivor, there's a huge thunderstorm. Water is coming up. Lightning in the sky. He refuses to let anyone take cover. Lightning's flashing overhead. The camera operators are standing in water. He's just confident the lightning wouldn't strike. He says, there was never a question of stopping due to the storm. Survivor was real. Period. Real meant shooting until it was unsafe. From that moment on, Survivor would have the stamp of authenticity.
Man, he put his crews through things so much more dangerous than fighting in the Falklands War. Mark Burnett, now super Christian somehow, like loves Jesus and lives in Park City, Utah and skis every day. I mean, we'll get into this more next week, but almost certainly the guy responsible for giving us Donald Trump, someone he is now estranged to and apparently has complex feelings about his role in the rise of Donald Trump.
I got one last Mark Burnett quote before we move on. We're going to talk about Orientalism and colonialism later in terms of the aesthetic of Survivor, but you probably remember the tiki omens and what have you. This is quoting the Sally Tisdale book here, because Burnett is the one who really put the stamp for this aesthetic. Burnett idealized, quote, the simple wonders of life on a deserted tropical island in his memoir of the first season in Borneo, but he also defended the fake primitivism. It was a necessary protection for the delicate viewer, quoting Burnett again, the appropriation of elements from cultural anthropology, religious ritual, and Robert Louis Stevenson mines the common subconscious ideal of island life. All jungles have ruins and fire and lava and rope bridges and buried treasure and a chief. Without that built-in comfort factor, the audience would surely cringe as they realize how truly terrifying life on Pulau Tiga will be for the castaways. It needs to look like a Tintin comic. Otherwise, people won't get it.
Okay, let's talk about our only specific character for Survivor, which is Jeff Probst. You remember anything about this show? You remember Jeff Probst is the host, and he says, the tribe has spoken.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to talk about him briefly because he's the only constant. He's the most famous player in the game, and he wears a lot of hats. He's the host who explains the challenges to both the viewer and the players. He's the referee. He's a therapist of their struggle sessions. And he's a local god. He has this very funny, self-serious delivery for his game show. Like, that's what it is. It's a fucking game show, right? And so he'll open these tribal councils by saying, what happens here is sacred. It needs to be respected. He wanted to see if we can get a little more truth, because you ought to be able to feel safe to say things here that maybe you can't say back at camp.
He always is trying to draw this continuity between like local mysticism of wherever they're playing the game with the show Survivor, and saying that like the show Survivor is kind of inheriting this authentic mysticism that, you know, wherever they are might have. And it's funny because like the players do buy into it. And one of them talks about like how upset they were at getting voted off this sacred place. And then they turn around and see the back of the set and it's all styrofoam. Mm-hmm. In that first season, Jeff mentions like 4 times that the best predictor of someone being voted out is if their torch is blown out by the wind, you know, before the vote, right? Mm-hmm. Like the island spirits have conspired to weigh in on who's next, right? And like he keeps bringing this up and you're just like, stop trying to make the spiritual authenticity of this show happen.
Yeah. He says, all the episodes I watch, as I'm sure you've noticed by now, fire is sacred on this island. I just want, as an intellectual exercise, could you imagine Regis Philbin saying this on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? What happens here is sacred. It needs to be respected.
You're testing the gods right now by going for it. The show is filmed here in New York City. I want you to ask the Lenape Indians which answer you think is right.
But at the same time, Jeff Probst is a guy who goes cards on the table when it comes to the artifice of the thing. He, in an interview, described his job as how to tell a story in the jungle with heroes and villains and archetypes and underdogs and all that stuff. He said he wants to find every player's dramatic arc, the beginning, the middle, and the end to every player's story. And here is like, this is just fiction with extra steps.
That's fiction without writers or actors.
Yeah. And yeah, he's always putting his thumb on the scale for this game show, right? During the challenges, he's a trash-talking drill sergeant. He's shouting things like, my nephew could throw it harder. I'm doing Regis again.
My nephew could throw it harder than that.
Yeah. And then you get to the tribal council, and he's this absolute messy bitch who loves drama when he leads these struggle sessions. And he's there to foster more drama. Like there's an example that I lifted from the book where someone named Alicia is in danger, and the 3 women in the tribe privately discuss the possibility of a secret women's alliance. And then at the tribal council, Jeff just floats a few ideas. He's just talking, the way people do, about a lot of different ways Tribal could go tonight. And he says, what if, the 3 women formed a secret alliance? He's always just teeing people up in particular ways, which is just so funny given that he's also talking about the magic wind fire at the same time.
That's his role. I find that I actually like the most is during the tribal council sessions, he will just straight up ask people, bald-faced, hey, you're doing this sort of secret alliance, like let's talk about it in front of everyone, and people get a little rattled and they stumble over their words and deny it.
And your one miscellaneous Jeff Probst fact, he once dated a contestant who sunbathed naked for 3 years after the show. So
yeah, I don't love Jeff Probst, and not just because of this. I find that as a host, I'm not sure what his like wins above replacement are, like the sports stat. He just kind of seems like a generic host. I'm not really sure that he's like above average in any way. I mean, sure, he's had longevity, but yeah, dating a contestant who sunbathed naked on the show, that's poor form. I think the book says that like it sort of breaks the disassociation that he has, from people if he's like also interested in fucking the people that are on the show.
He's also kind of an asshole. I don't know if anyone else would bring that level of messy bitch asshole that he does to it. Like in the season 1 finale, when the final challenge is to keep your hand on the totem for as long as possible, he's coming and he's taunting them with orange slices. He's taunting them with water that they can't drink.
That's fun. That's good old-fashioned fun right there.
Yeah.
He's now an executive producer too. Mark Burnett, he's got to go and make new innovations in reality TV. He's got to do Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? And so he's since like put Jeff Probst sort of in charge of running this whole operation.
Yeah, a handsome white man in a safari shirt who's always clean and put together, taunting our filthy, tired, hungry castaways. Pulls up to their camp in like a speedboat yacht half the time. I think he's there for you to kind of hate him.
Interesting. Okay. All right, let's move on to our characters. We're not going to be able to talk about all the characters, obviously, but we can talk about archetypes that you're likely to see on the show. Probably more than other reality shows, you're likely to see like regular people. These are not the Real Housewives, right? These are people with like a lot of regional accents, lunch ladies, farmers, doctors, gravediggers.
Sometimes they'll be passive aggressive. They'll describe one guy as an Ivy League graduate.
Yeah. And in these first seasons, I think it's interesting because it's not as many people that are like wanting to be famous. Like that's kind of the issue I have with watching any kind of reality show now is they're all about influencers, right? Even like Love is Blind or something. You're like, oh, look at these people who like want to be famous. But in these early seasons, you get a lot of people who just seemingly are just picked up off the street.
A lot of people are actually motivated by the survival aspect of Survivor. They want to see, could I live on a deserted island for 39 days or whatever? There are some people who want to be famous. Like the doctor on the first season really wanted to be a doctor consultant on Hollywood shows or what have you. Some of them are trying to parlay it into stardom of some kind. I think it's certainly true in later seasons where everybody just now wants to be this new thing called a reality TV star.
Yeah, but let's talk about more of the like specific personality traits that some of the people have on the show. So, a lot of times it breaks out into people who are self-aware and people who are not. And people who are not self-aware are like what I'll call like the eccentrics, right? People who like have a character archetype that they are going to be in spite of themselves. Like they cannot help but be annoying, right? And every season you're going to have someone like Coach, I think is the most famous example from Survivor.
I believe you mean the Dragon Slayer, as he called himself.
Coach, does it bother you that some people might question these stories?
I've said from the very beginning that I wanted to walk the path of the noble warrior and finding that great competition that you can pit yourself against.
I mean, this is a guy who doesn't understand how annoying he is, right? So he can't turn it off. And someone who like buys into their own bullshit. And one of like the funniest things in Survivor is that when it gets down to the final 2 or 3, the people who have been eliminated are going to vote on the winner. And so it incentivizes you to keep these people around, even though everybody hates them and can't stand them. That means that you should bring them along to be in the final 3 with you so that they don't get any votes. And so like there's a term for these people. They're called goats, apparently.
Yes. Not the greatest of all time.
Yeah, but just like weirdos.
There was one on the first season named Greg, who was a full-on Gen X performance artist. He was walking around the beach with a pretend phone made of coconuts. Just did not take the game seriously at all.
He's such a Gen X guy that he like has to undermine the nature of the show, where he'll be like, wow, a lot of drama in this situation. Like, you know, he has to be irreverent.
He shockingly did not win.
Yeah, because he was smart. He's the Ivy League graduate.
Yep.
Yeah, anyway, we'll talk more about the first season later. But now let's talk a little bit about our winners. Who wins on Survivor? You know, the conditions of every season are always different because the players are different and the mechanics change a little bit. But typically, winners often have traits that are shared.
The answer is actually just to be middle of the road. It is like centrism wins on Survivor. All of these traits could be put under the umbrella term of don't stick out. It's a great way to win. Be a little bit quiet, but don't be silent. Be likable, but not too likable. Be useful, be helpful, but don't be bossy. Do well in the challenges, but don't do so well that you're unbeatable. And don't express too many opinions. Don't argue. Do your chores without complaining. And don't complain about others not doing chores.
So how it works is like you go to the island and there's 2 tribes at first, and whichever tribe like wins the immunity challenge that week, they don't have to go to tribal council, but the loser does, and they have to vote one of their members off. And then once half of the players have been eliminated, they merge as one tribe, and now the immunity challenges are for a single person. And so when we say the strategy here is to be middle of the road, what we mean is that if you are annoying, unhelpful, bad at challenges, you will likely be eliminated during the 2 tribe stage, right? Because like you're holding your team back. And then if you're a leader, too strong, you will almost certainly be eliminated very early on in the 1 tribe scenario, right? Yeah. Because you're a threat. You're good at the game. And so almost always the people who win are people who kind of stay in the middle performance-wise, right? You don't want to stick your head out too much and be someone who's known for being good at challenges, good at socializing, because it just puts a target on your back.
I found it very funny. Apparently, it's an advantage to be a little bit culturally Midwestern, ordinary and polite, but it's not good to actually be from the Midwest because when they poured over the data, people from the West and Midwest are more likely to be voted out than people from the South and Northeast. And when we talk about conformity winning, again, we have numbers. We have spreadsheets, as we'll talk about in a second with Edgic. One of the strongest predictors of a person's chance of winning is how often they voted with the majority.
Yes, you see that when you look at these spreadsheets is like in the last like 6 or 7 episodes, the final 4 or final 3 are always voting in unison for like the last 5 rounds. It's the best indicator that you're going to make it far is if you're voting the same as everybody else. You're able to find yourself in a coordinating situation. And then the other strong indicator is during the 2 tribe stage, if you're on the tribe that is winning immunity a lot, that's a very good indicator that you'll make it to the end, because we'll talk about this later when we talk about the 15th season. A dominant strategy of the game when the 2 tribes merge is for the larger tribe to vote out one by one the members of the smaller tribe.
Yeah, the mechanics of this game are a little bit broken because one of the early rewards for a winning tribe is the ability to start a fire. Like they'll give you flint or they'll give you waterproof matches. And so if you get that early advantage of fire whenever you want, it means that you can cook better meals, you're better fed, you have more calories, you have more energy. Virtuous cycle, you win more challenges. Virtuous cycle double, your tribe is bigger than the other tribe. Some busted mechanics in Survivor. I would also just add before we move on from the winners, the show often makes big drama about age gaps between the contestants. Like the young people think the old people are dead weight, the old people think the young people are lazy. But across 40 seasons, the average age of the winners was 31. And this is a show that puts 22-year-olds on the island, right? And the oldest winner was 57. So again, being middle of the pack, even age-wise, centrist conformity is the optimal strategy to win Survivor.
Let's talk about the losers then.
Yes, let's.
Yeah, so who are people who often lose Survivor? From the seasons I watched, I mean, the most guaranteed way to lose typically was to be annoying, right? You know, you're stuck on an island with these people, and oftentimes, I'm sure this isn't true in the later seasons, but in the early seasons, there's 2 ways that you can vote typically in tribal council. You can vote strategically, which is to like eliminate one of the stronger players or someone who you think is likely to win, or you can do like a quality of life elimination, which is like, let's vote off someone who fights with other people at camp Let's vote off the Christian woman who won't stop talking about Jesus. Let's vote off like the creepy guy who keeps like grinding into you while you sleep. Every now and then, I think people do eliminate someone they find annoying, even if it's against their strategic interest to do so.
Yeah, there are far more ways to lose Survivor than you are to win. Quoting Sally Tisdale again, getting angry, gloating, whining. We could put all these under the umbrella of being annoying. Saying you're tired, saying you don't feel good, saying you're lonely. One guy chose to take a dump in the shallow water just outside of camp. Immediately eliminated. Don't talk all the time. Don't be too loud. Never say, I'm in control of this game. Don't act paranoid. Don't start a romance, because then people think, oh, you're in an alliance. You're in a block. Don't be too confident. Never predict your win. Yeah, being annoying is a guaranteed way to lose.
BB, the second guy to be voted off of Survivor in the first season, he contributes a lot to camp, right? And so he thinks, oh, I'll be saved. If they take out me, it'll be like they dropped an atomic bomb around here, you know? Meanwhile, everyone's just like annoyed that he keeps telling people to work harder. And so they're like, goodbye.
Yep. He is a boomer real estate developer.
Yeah.
He gloated, saying that he could take his like dirty headband and put it and use the last of the fresh drinking water to wash it, and people would still keep him around. Peace.
The romance that Ben was talking about is a great example, because like imagine you start a romance with someone. It puts a target on your back because now people know that you have a strong bond with another player, which makes you stronger because now you have two votes in unison that's reliable because you have loyalty to each other. So that's what I mean when I say that like people who display strength, leadership, strong bonds to others, it very much does put a target on your back. So you need to do all this without making it visible to others.
Yeah. And I think it's very hilarious that the show incentivizes all of these losing strategies with its structure. Jeff Probst's leading questions are meant to make you gloat or be annoying in some way. The challenges, sometimes the rewards are there to sow dissent. So like a reward will be like a really nice meal that you get to leave camp to get, and you get to share it with only 2 of your castaways, guaranteeing that if you are in a 4-person alliance or what have you, you're leaving someone out in the cold. We have found the optimal strategy over 50 seasons, and they designed the mechanics in such a way to force people to take up these losing strategies in a lot of ways.
It's funny how often, like if you win a quality of life, a challenge, there's 2 challenges every week, right? The immunity challenge and like the reward challenge, which is often like, oh, you get to go on a yacht and eat a nice meal and sleep in a nice bed. And so often you're given like a +1. You can bring another player. And it's very often not a gift, but like a curse, because all it does is sow resentment with all the other players.
A poison chalice.
It also removes you from the social setting of the island, because now everybody can talk shit about you and conspire against you. But one thing all of these people have in common are that they do not prepare to be on Survivor. They will at most gain a little bit of extra weight, but you know, otherwise no one learns how to make a fire. No one gets a base tan.
Nobody trains for the physical challenges.
There is a guy who apparently like 3D printed copies of all the puzzles that you have to solve, and then would just like solve them over and over again, almost like an LSAT prep test or something. And then when he got on Survivor, he was able to win all of the puzzle challenges really quickly.
Nice.
But very few people bother to do this.
Some people show up not being able to swim. There's a story from the season where they do brains versus bronze, where the brains tribe wins a fire making kit that includes kerosene, and then a member of the brainy tribe uses almost all of the kerosene on their first fire and doesn't know what to do next, nor does anybody know how to keep a fire going. Like, how many months did you have to prepare for this? But I don't think it's an accident. It's because this is not actually a survival game. This is a social game. And while the survival skills will help you, they won't win you the game.
This show is much closer to The Amazing Race than it is to, you know, Naked and Afraid or something.
Yeah. And I just want to say one last thing about the people who go on this show. In the early seasons, players were allowed to bring one luxury item to take with them. Here are some of the things that people have brought: an American flag, a Texas flag, war paint, massage oil, creep, perv, red flag, fire dancer torches, lipstick, a magic fucking 8-ball, a bottle of cologne, a skateboard, a ukulele, and a fucking bongo. Someone brought a bongo. Bring matches.
And as we'll see, like a lot of people who go on Survivor after season 1 are fans of the show. You know, they know the meta. They know the dominant strategy.
Which is why they're always tweaking the rules in some way and introducing new mechanics to try and keep contestants on their toes. Like introducing Exile Island or whatever.
Or introducing like tribe swapping. Right. In Survivor season 15, I mentioned earlier that it's good to not be too good at the game, because what can often happen is the other tribe gets a chance to steal 2 of your members for a few days. And in those few days, they'll like purposely lose the immunity challenge and then vote off the members they stole. And so don't be too strong. It just puts a target on your back for the other team too.
Yep.
Okay, let's paint a portrait of like, who are people who watch Survivor?
A 2010 survey found that registered Republicans are more likely to watch Survivor and reality television in general than registered Democrats. And this fact is going to give me Bill Maher levels of smugness, right? But it's not all good for the left of center folks, because apparently in the survey, Democrats seem to prefer character-driven dramas like Dexter. There is no hope for America. When you watch the show, the advertisements, it reminds me honestly of the NFL. It's military recruitment, medications for ulcerative colitis, detergents, progressive insurance campaigns, AT&T, the Sleep Number mattress. Yeah, it's the same sort of schlock that you see when you watch pro football generally. But I think the thing you got to understand about Survivor fans is that true fans fucking love this show. And they have studied The Blade. CBS has really tried to milk every teat on this cash cow by producing so much of its own Survivor content. So there's an entire second series, basically, where it's videos of Ponderosa, the resort area where the jury members meet between the tribal councils, and you can watch that on CBS All Access.
God, if you're watching that, you're wasting your life. I'm sorry. That kind of reminds me of like the Big Brother camera. One of the Big Brother seasons in the 2000s introduced a camera that was in the house that you could just like log on and watch at any time you wanted to.
They produce their, compilations, special moments, trivia contests, interviews, spoilers. Then you got fan-created content on YouTube, obviously thousands of videos about Survivor, including, all your obligatory compilations, strategy videos, entire seasons recreated in Minecraft. There's Survivor podcasts, Survivor know-it-alls, Outlast, The Tribe, Survivor historians. And then there's a whole ecosystem where former players return to play again, but they also come back as mentors, commentators, critics, relatives of new players, in the same way that, Troy Aikman does color commentary now, or Greg Olson is up in the booth, or Tony Romo, once he's done being a player, as a commentator. We have that for Survivor. There is truly no limit on how much Survivor slop folks are willing to produce. And I just want to say there is absolutely nothing passive about Survivor fandom. Which brings us to the metrics.
Yes. Would you believe that there is a sabermetric system that fans developed for Survivor? Because, Ben and I talked about like the conceit of the show, the way that they edit it for entertainment is actually like there is subtext to the way that the story is presented. We talked about how Jeff Probst or Mark Burnett, they want to present like a character arc. And so if you can see the arc, you can actually like mathematically classify it into different confessional scene types, right? As like, what are some of them called? Like complex personality, villain, whatever. And then you can actually use sabermetrics to predict who is going to win based on a process they call EDGIC.
Yes.
Which is editing and logic.
Yeah, the subreddit forum Unspoiled Edgicers United has a 5,000 word primer just on how it works. And it just reminded me of Jack Donaghy business jargon when I read it, right? Survivors are classed as invisible, under the radar, middle of the road, complex personality, and over the top. Another metric is SPV, or second person visibility, when they're discussed by other players. Oh, and those first ratings are based on everything from how many sentences they speak to whether they answer questions in tribal councils. Then they're rated by tone, based on what music accompanies their scenes, to any comments by Jeff, to which animals get flashed on screen when they talk. And all of these data points get put into some kind of formula for rating, and we end up with fucking spreadsheets. Imagine applying sabermetrics to a Harlem Globetrotters game, and that's what this is.
I mean, it's funny because like sabermetrics was invented for baseball so they could like win the World Series, but people have poured so much time into making sabermetric Survivor so they can win their office's Survivor pool, like this,
so that they can know before.
Right.
So let's talk season 1 of Survivor.
Yeah, we're going to talk about 2 seasons today. Season 1, which was made in the year 2000, and season 15, which was made in the year 2007, so near the latter part of the decade.
It's summer programming. It's cheap. It has only a 75-person crew. Later seasons would be up like 300, 350 people working on the show. And it's worth stressing just how much work goes into filming Survivor. Players aren't allowed to wander too far from the crew. They're not allowed to talk to the camera crew. If they do, the crews can't respond. And over 6,000 people applied for this first season. They did hundreds of interviews, dozens of physical exams, background checks, psychological evaluations, and eventually whittled down the applicants to 16 people. And I think it's important and worth stressing, this is not some random cross-section of America. It's not Willy Wonka's fucking golden ticket here. This is a highly curated reality meant to also help represent CBS's viewer demographic.
Right. They have old people because they're part of the CBS viewer demographic, but the personalities are typically, people who have exaggerated personalities. Like I said, people with strong regional accents, the redneck, the chief of medicine.
And it does tend to be overwhelmingly white. Also, very few people of color on Survivor generally.
There's a range of people, a 22-year-old rafting guide, a 72-year-old ex-Navy SEAL, Rudy.
He probably felt right at home, backstabbing people in a tropical location. But unfortunately, this time it was a metaphorical backstabbing and not the backstabbing he was probably used to.
Okay, let me do a quick plot recap for you of season 1. Season 1, I think, if you're going to talk about Survivor, season 1 is so interesting because it's the most unique. And what makes it unique is that everybody going onto it, unlike every other season, everyone going into it has never heard of Survivor before as a game show. And so it has a very unique moral dimension where people think that making an alliance is immoral or wrong, right? Like the people who go on the show are more interested in seeing can I survive on a desert island like Robinson Crusoe, less than thinking about it like a strategic game show. And that is so unique to this season and changes so much. And I think why it makes season 1 worth talking about, even though it's not exactly the most high drama season, but it's very unique.
These people actually view the contest as some kind of meritocracy.
Yes.
They think you should vote out the people who are holding you back or who aren't contributing, and they are trying to play the game ethically. They are wrestling with the idea of, is it even right to make an alliance? And of course, the final 4 are going to be the people who make a fucking alliance.
Yeah. In episode 4, an alliance is established between season 1 winner Richard Hatch, Rudy, our 72-year-old ex-Navy SEAL, and Sue from Wisconsin.
And Kelly, the 22-year-old rafting instructor, are the final 4.
Actually, Kelly tries to make a new alliance, but they think it's immoral to actually get into an alliance. So they try to vote Kelly off, but I think she wins the last 4 immunity challenges in a row. And finally, it gets down to the final 3 between Kelly, Richard Hatch, and Rudy. And Rudy is someone who, this guy's born in 1928. He may be one of the oldest people to ever appear in a reality television show. And he's very loyal to Richard Hatch, the self-described predator of the show. Richard is someone who hunts with a spear in the water while diving for stingrays and things like that. He's kind of a fatter guy, but you watch him stalk prey and he's really made into this predator. And he's really the only person who's playing the game as cutthroat as everyone in the future will come to play the game. And so sometimes you look at Richard and you're like, yes, he's good at the game, but also it's a bit like saying Babe Ruth was the best to ever play baseball, right? He was playing in an era where there was no dunking or whatever, right? The best basketball player in the NBA in the 1920s playing against white guys who couldn't dunk or something. But he is honest about being a cutthroat strategist. And ultimately, in the end, the jury gives it to him over Kelly. because often these jury selections come down to like, who do I hate the least between these last two people? Because like they've backstabbed everybody to get there. And they vote for Richard because he's more open and upfront about how he's playing the game and he's like being deceitful, right? And I think that to me, the best theme from season 1 of Survivor is naivety. The idea of being naive and like the limits of being ethical and naive, because there's this like leader of the ethical players. His name is Sean, right? And he's like the chief resident at a hospital in New York City. I doubt he needs the money, right? He's like a doctor, but he's there to see if he can hack it out here. Right. And he feels immoral voting for people to vote them off the island because like he doesn't really like believe the game should be played that way. He thinks that like everybody should go in there and really think about like who is the worst survivalist, and that's who you should vote for. So he begins voting alphabetically every week.
Kenneth Parcell ass decision. I don't believe in choosing, so I just go in alphabetical order.
Right, exactly. And ultimately, like there's this moment when there's 7 people left. And remember, the alliance is 4 people. And so, like, obviously what's going to happen with this alliance is they're just going to vote off the other 3 people one by one.
Right.
Because that,
math,
like, why wouldn't,
numbers.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? But there's one week where 2 of the people in the alliance are fighting. This woman, Kelly, who makes it to the final, she actually doesn't vote with the alliance. So this is your one chance to actually get rid of Richard and the people in the alliance, because they're not voting together. Only 3 of them are voting together this week. And so in this one opportunity for Richard to not win the show, it comes down to a situation where Richard has 3 votes and Jenna has 4. And the tie-breaking vote is made by Sean, you know, Mr. Morality, because Jenna is next alphabetically before Richard. And you're just like, this guy is so stupid. But yeah, Rich gets 3 votes and Jenna got 4. Like, this is the closest Rich comes to losing. Sean is doing a confessional to the camera and he's like, yeah, you know, I'm gonna win. There's no doubt in my mind that I'm gonna win. I got what it takes. Like, Sue and Kelly are not getting along, so I have to do something with that. And you're just watching this going, you're the dumbest fucking person I've ever seen in my life. Because like, one, you don't win by just thinking, I know in my mind that I'm gonna win. You win by counting the votes and saying, okay, there's 7 people left, I need 4 votes. Which means you're not saying, oh, Sue and Kelly are not getting along, so I'll have to maybe do something with that. It's like, no. There's no maybe I'll do something with that. It's like, I have to get Kelly to vote with my 3 people. You need to have this concrete vision of where you're going to get these votes from. It's not just like this hope thing. Maybe he was buying into the island's mysticism, actually determining who the meritocratic leader would be. But like Sean, you know, the leader, the Jack Fox of this season 1, I'd say, he's talking about voting for someone in the final episode. And he's like, the camp would have fallen apart without you. He still understands this game as a matter of like making camp and surviving on the island. Like, that's why I say this season has such like a unique moral premise to it. I think it was really just like a beautiful exploration of like what happens in a world where you're naive and like your naivety gets in the way of you being able to continue being ethical. Had they got rid of Richard that week, like he might have been able to play in like the kumbaya version of the game that he had in mind, but it would have required him for one moment to be a little bit strategic.
Machiavellian, cutthroat.
Yes, exactly.
You need to understand, listener, just how open Richard was about what he was doing. In his one-on-one viewer confessionals, he is so arrogant. He's saying, like, that check already has my name on it. But when he's talking with other people, he's pretty open about the fact that he's strategizing. And he's flabbergasted that people didn't seem to read the tagline of the show. Outwit, outlast, outplay, or whatever the 3 things are.
He has the vision to actually think about the game. Richard, I mean, has the vision to be like, okay, there are 7 people left. What does that mean? That means I need 4 votes to guarantee someone is off. Okay, I'm in an alliance with 2 other people. That's 3 votes. Sean has already announced that he's voting for Jenna because he's voting alphabetically. So if the 3 of us vote for Jenna, then the other 3 who are voting for me will be less than 4. When I say he has vision, I mean...
You mean he can do basic arithmetic is what you mean when you say he has vision.
He can do math and like a little bit of game theory. And as a result, he wins the season because everyone else is frolicking around, just trying to survive on the island like it's Robinson Crusoe. They're forgetting that they're on a game show, and they truly believe that the person who will win is the person who deserves it most, right?
He also understands how he is perceived, right? Because I don't know if you've heard, perception is reality. And so he knows that he's rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. From the very first episode, he's this brash corporate consultant who's saying, you guys, we need to talk through what we're doing. We're just running around with like chickens with our heads cut off. He doesn't try and make himself the dictator leader, but he tries to like organize the crew a little bit, and he starts to rub some people the wrong way. And so he knows that his bad reputation is actually an asset in the final stages of the game, because it will come down to 2 final people being voted by the people that they've backstabbed, the jury of voted off castaways. When there's 3 people left, he knows that one person has an incentive to keep him around because he's built this reputation for himself. So there's this great moment in the season finale where they're in their final immunity challenge as individuals. They get to keep their hand on a totem pole, and he just quits because he knows that whoever actually gets the immunity is going to vote off that third person to keep him around for the 1v1. And it works! He wins!
One of Survivor's like signature moves is that the final immunity challenge, you know, the thing that will guarantee you entrance into the tribal council vote, is a challenge that is like an endurance test of will, right? So like, how long can you stand on a platform with your hand against a totem pole, right? And this goes on for hours. Right? It must be agonizing, and it's just a test of willpower. There's nothing like physically challenging. I mean, it's not like solving a puzzle or a race or a wrestle. It's just a matter of like, who can deal with this boredom the most, right? Who wants it more? And Richard gives up within like an hour with the understanding that, oh, I'm the most annoying person here. So like the other 2 players would never eliminate me because that would mean that their opponent in the tribal council vote is less annoying than me. And Mark Burnett says this is his favorite game mechanic in the show, is this tribal council vote, because it incentivizes you to be nice to everyone, because the jury is going to pick who gets the $1 million. So like the people that you've already eliminated is going to elect who gets the money.
Yeah, it's push and pull factors. Like you need to be conniving and backstabby and strategic, but you can't be too much of an asshole, because at the end of the day, it is a straight up-down popularity contest between the final 2.
And Richard is funny, you know, he catches fish for everyone throughout the season once they get like a snorkeling mask, and he's able to give people food, and he kind of figures this gives people like some reason to keep me around. But as soon as he gets to the stage where there's 4 people left, where like now he's being kept around because like he's the most hateable person on the show, he just stops fishing. He's like, there's no point in helping people anymore. But yeah, Richard Hatch, you know, wins in the end, the self-described predator on this island full of naive people.
It's just like the game Mafia, right? Which was invented by Soviet psychologists to prove that an informed minority will always beat an informed majority. And he had the information of just like the basic rules of the game that everyone else was ignoring. And he won. And the viewers hated him. When they did a Survivor reunion after the fact and they polled America, do you think the right person won? 65% of people said no. That might have also been some late in 2000s homophobia. Richard Hatch was a gay man.
Yeah, he comes out on the show in the 2nd episode, which is funny because he forms an alliance with Rudy, you know, the 72-year-old guy we keep talking about, the ex-Navy SEAL, who is like openly homophobic, right? And it's such a strange partnership because Rudy, I guess, is from a generation where like my word is my bond or whatever, right? Like he is truly loyal to Richard to the end. And it's funny the way he talks about Richard, where he's like, well, you know, he's a homosexual. So once the show's over, like, I hope I never speak to him again.
There's a great line he has in a confessional. He says, you know, I started making friends with Richard, but not in a homosexual way.
Yeah, it's just funny that they have like the strongest strategic bond on the show. And I think Rudy respects that he's like an intelligent sort of like social manipulator, while always saying openly throughout the show, like, I would never want to associate with this person outside of this game because, you know, he's a homosexual.
Mm-hmm.
Richard Hatch, we should mention, like, went to jail for like 5 years for tax evasion for not reporting his $1 million prize, which that's almost like a stand-up joke, right? Like, 125 million people watched you win $1 million and you tried to not declare the income.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, may I present exhibits A through Z. Every individual episode of season 1 of Survivor.
Of all the crimes to try to get away with, this is the most public one you could have chosen.
He did not understand the rules of the game of the tax code, it turns out.
Yeah, he tried to outlast the tax man. But yeah, I mean, he kind of fucked his life up through that because he had a very hard time getting on like Survivor All-Stars, and like he came back for a couple times, but like given his stature, he was often not able to leave the country as a result of his criminal status.
Damn.
But yeah, we have some, hey, it's the 2000s moments in season 1 that I'll quickly call out. One is like they're eating these maggots on the show and they're saying to each other like, oh, you've been to Chinese restaurants, you've eaten worse. And you're just like, what? What are you talking about?
Christ.
Yeah, those maggots, by the way, that's just something where Mark Burnett like approached the locals and was like, can you eat these? And they were like, yeah, as long as you like don't swallow the head or whatever.
Yeah, you can't swallow them whole because the head has these pincers that can bite your throat. So you have to bite off the head, spit it out, and eat the maggots.
But it's funny, as much as you just like assume that this is like a super safe situation, a lot of people get pretty fucked up by Survivor. Like a lot of people get parasites in their system. And remember that endurance challenge I talked about where you have to like have your hand against the totem? I think in the 5th season, it goes on for over 12 hours and only ends because somebody gets nerve damage in their feet.
Damn.
And yeah, just like the hey, it's the 2000s moments, the way that they talk about Richard's homosexuality is very of the 2000s, right? Like Sean, the like self-described leader, the ethical player, the Jack Fox, he drops the F slur like a bunch of times in the finale. In front of 125 million people, he had no problem saying that. Like, damn, this really was the year 2000. All right, let's talk about season 15, the other season that we watched in full. This season takes place in China, which I thought would be interesting. That was like my primary draw for seeing it because they always find like some way to like romanticize and mysticize the setting. So I thought that it might be funny. You know, if there was ever going to be the Olympics somewhere, I found that Survivor often would do a season there because it kind of like, it's synergy, you know, as Jack Donaghy might say, right? The two big stories this year are, the first one is the idea of don't bite the apple as put by James. And biting the apple is, you know, remember I mentioned where the two tribes come together into one tribe? So what typically happens at that point is the larger tribe votes off every member of the smaller tribe. And you can be tempted to vote off some of the players of the larger tribe at first. And James, who's the gravedigger, you know, he's like 245 pounds of muscle, giant guy. This is the metaphor he often uses, is like voting off someone annoying from the larger tribe is what he's calling don't bite the apple, right? The giving into the temptation of veering from the dominant strategy of voting off the smaller tribe. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I would highly recommend, if you want to watch one season, season 15 I found to be intensely compelling. A lot of great drama. And actually that book, Survivor and the Endless Gaze, opens with the next thing we're going to talk about from season 15. Getting back to this don't bite the apple idea, the tribes merge. There's 7 from the larger tribe and 3 from the smaller tribe. And so obviously what you're expecting is, okay, they're going to vote off the 3 people from the smaller tribe, right? But because the team of 7 has had so few opportunities to remove the annoying members from their group, they still have so many annoying people. And so they actually get tempted into voting off people from the larger tribe, even though it's strategically better to vote off people from the smaller tribe. There's this guy, Jean Robert, who is this professional poker player. You know, he's a guy that when he's getting into bed with everybody, he like is always trying to get next to the women. And he's talking about how he wants to win $1 million and some ass. Like he's just like a disgusting, creepy guy. And yet they can't get rid of him because that tribe keeps winning immunity. And then once they get to the one tribe scenario, you're no longer incentivized to get rid of him because one, he's part of your like larger tribe alliance, but then two, he's never going to be awarded the $1 million either.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was really interesting. I also thought it was interesting that, like, as annoying and creepy as he is, this tribe still chooses to get rid of the proselytizing Christian first.
Yeah, I think one thing that becomes abundantly clear watching Survivor, and this is what the academic sub-discipline of Survivor studies has noted, is that human beings are fundamentally irrational. Homo economicus does not exist. We are irrational beings through and through.
And then the other like major plot point from season 15 that I want to talk about, and it's actually something that Survivor and the Endless Gaze opens with in that book we talked about, is the situation in the final four. So the final four comes down to like this woman, Courtney, and Courtney is a bit of a goat. Right? She is an attractive young woman from New York City, a waitress. When the show starts, she weighs 93 pounds. She goes down to 86 pounds by the end of the show. She's 5'7", by the way.
Jesus.
This woman is very much a 2000s sort of skinny girl.
She's kind of like a Cerie from 30 Rock-like figure, actually. They have a lot in common. Courtney and Cerie.
And, you know, she talks openly about how, like, she's from New York. Like, she would never associate with some of these flyover people in real life. And, like, they do that a lot with contestants from New York. There's always, like, a little cutaway of them being like, I would never talk to these people in real life. You know? So her, Todd, who's sort of like a scheming gay guy, you know, who's, like, very much playing the game of Survivor. He's a fan of the show, right? Little guy. Amanda, who is the middle of the pack winner that we've been talking about. Someone who has managed to stay under the radar, doesn't show too much of their personality, votes in a block, like with other people. And then finally, Denise. And Denise is a lunch lady from Revere, Mass, you know? So it's the four of them left, right? And the three of them will go in front of the jury. So what will happen here naturally, right? Strategically, if you're anyone who's not Denise, do you want Denise going to the final in front of the jury? No. Right? She's like a regular salt of the earth person. And so everybody understands that as much as like we like Denise, we would never allow her to go to the finals. And, you know, in the Test of Wills challenge, you have to balance a bunch of plates that are like stacked on top of each other. And it is so heartbreaking because Denise is like sweating from the knuckles. I think she kind of knows in the back of her mind that like, I'll never be brought into the final three. The final three are the people who get paid the most too. Like there's a huge jump in pay if you make it to the final three. And so Denise knows this and she's trying so hard to win that competition of wills, but she ultimately like just can't beat Amanda, who's a rock. The women seem to be very good at those final endurance immunity challenges. Both seasons, a woman won. And then afterwards, like Denise has to go to Amanda, who won the immunity challenge, and make a plea to like keep her around. Even though Amanda knows if I bring this woman to the final, like she's winning.
I mean, everybody's going to have things that they can still do. You know what I mean? But this is all I got right now. I'm not going to have much after this. No, that's the only thing. Todd's going to have a career in LA. You're going to do your fashion line. This is all I got. I got to go back to my family. You know? I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I'm just saying, you know, that I'm going to go back to making $7 an hour, working as a lunch lady, doing the same thing day after day like I've been doing.
And in that speech, Amanda is going to tell her, yeah, don't worry, I won't vote for you. And she backstabs Denise. And when they're in the tribal council, Todd, who's like the scheming weasel, openly says like, wow, it's like so interesting that you said you wouldn't vote against Denise, but you did anyway. And like, wow, what a betrayal. Like Todd immediately realizing, because when you're in tribal council, you're also in front of the jury who comes back to watch. And he's like, he's already playing the final round, right? By pointing out to the jury, hey, look who like backstabbed Denise.
We all love Denise. How could she?
But that speech like reminds me so much of like Ben Affleck in Good Will Hunting. Like, yeah, you know, I'm going to go back to my family. It's a lunch lady, $7 an hour. And she's just got this pitiful look on her face where she knows she's lost. But that sort of like strategic predicament for everybody where they all know that they have to vote off Denise because she is so likable and like such a deserving person is a microcosm of like the 1,000 sort of interesting strategic decisions on this show that make Survivor entertaining. Obviously, we can't talk about them all, but that gives you a flavor of the type of Machiavellian positioning you have to do every episode. And so hopefully you can glean a little something into the type of strategery you might expect on Survivor.
Yeah, and it's heartbreaking to see, just in terms of the show bringing the worst out of people. Maybe my parents were right in the early 2000s. It's Courtney who says, in reference to Denise, this isn't welfare. This is Survivor, baby. Like, even though we are on this ostensibly deserted island, brand new civilization, we still have these ties. The classism of the old world survives still.
Yeah, because after that conversation between Amanda and Denise, Amanda is going to go to Courtney and be like, it's going to kill me to vote her off. Like, she's such a good person. And that's where Courtney, our waitress from New York City, says, this isn't welfare. It's not our fault. She sucks at life.
This isn't like welfare. You know, like she doesn't deserve it just because, you know, she sucks at life.
I find that fascinating. She doesn't deserve it just because she sucks at life. And you know what? Denise is going to vote for Courtney in the final 3.
Oh.
And that breaks my heart to imagine Denise watching this show. And the person she votes for says that she sucks at life. You know, because she's not a 93-pound waitress from New York City or whatever.
Yeah. You both bring people food. How dare you?
Yeah, funnily enough, that endurance challenge, like I said, was like balancing plates. And Courtney is like one of the first people eliminated. And I'm like, this is your job. But hopefully that, anyway, gleans some of like the strategic entertainment factors that go into the 15th season, right? These kinds of plays. So I'm like, hey, it's the 2000s moments from this season. Frosty, one of my favorite players from this season, he's a parkour guy.
Hell yeah.
He describes himself as like a parkour athlete. And he like actually does well in a lot of the challenges that involve parkour-like moves. Courtney, it's funny, she looks like so gorgeous on the island because she's like just naturally very good looking. And then when she shows up to the reunion special, I thought she looked like a lot worse because she's done up in like 2007 style, right? She has like Ashley Simpson hair and like eyeshadow. And you're like, oh yeah, this is like how a hot person would have styled themselves in 2007. And like, it doesn't look that great to me anyway. And it is funny, I think in these early seasons, I kind of got the sense that the game could be sort of unfair to women, but I think it's just in the early challenges, like there's a wrestling competition and like you just see guys like shoving women's faces like into the mud.
Gender blind wrestling. Let's go.
Yeah. Another like little, hey, it's the 2000s moment. In the first episode, they're describing everybody's jobs, right, as they arrive in China. And so it's like a former model, this guy Dave, who's like hilariously annoying and unself-aware, but like student / parkour athlete, WWE wrestler, gravedigger, chicken farmer, waitress, gay flight attendant. They describe the eventual season winner, Todd, when they're putting everybody's job at the beginning. His job is gay flight attendant. And you're like, it's not his profession.
He was so good at being gay, he went pro.
But okay, all right, let's move on to the themes. I've done my best to try to explain, 15 hours of TV in a couple minutes, but let's talk about some of the themes that we have for Survivor. So we talked up top about the economics of reality TV. So let's just flesh that out a little bit more. We talked about how you don't have to pay the actors or the writers. There are no writers. And so there's no residuals to pay out to these people. And you're in another country. You can abuse the crew. There's this great moment where after the first episode of Survivor season 1, they've got the contestants into like a makeshift sleeping area. And one of the guys from the crew calls CBS headquarters and they're like, okay, we just finished our first day. Where should the crew head to sleep tonight? Like, where's our camp? And CBS is like, your camp? What are you talking about? The crew slept outside on the beach for the first 3 days because they hadn't made any arrangements for them.
Yeah, people frequently ask, how come there's never been a season of Survivor in America? We have wilderness, we have wild camps, we have wild places. It's because there are labor laws here that you can't abuse people the way that you can out somewhere in the South Pacific.
Yeah, take it up with the Marquesas government, And they have tried to unionize, too, the crews for Survivor.
The post-production crew, who do so much of the work, still don't have a union contract on this ludicrously successful show. They tried to go on strike, I think it was like season 29, to try and get health insurance. Also, another thing that drives up costs for scripted television, if you have a hit with each successive season, which is a new contract, returning people can ask for more money. Like everybody knows the cast of Friends was eventually making $1 million an episode, right? Because that was such a runaway freight train of success. Survivor was more popular than Friends when it came out. It was beating Friends in the 2000s. You were paying one person $1 million once a season, right? That's how much cheaper it is. And because you generally don't have returning players, you don't have this incentive of asking for more money.
Like as another example, Kelly, that woman from the first season, the one who made it to the final with Richard Hatch, they used her silhouette for the show's iconic logo. And she asked them, like, hey, you guys are making billions from my likeness. Like, can I get anything? She was sent a gift basket with a box of rice, fruit, and a candle that smells like the rain. This is a woman who had parasites in her system for months after the show ended.
God damn. The economics of reality TV are such that you can take advantage of working class people generally. What drives someone to volunteer for Survivor? I mean, the money, obviously. Just being on the jury, according to some leaks, is worth $40K. The first player who gets voted off, they still get a nice little $3,500. You get the free travel and a nice vacation because after you're voted out, you get to stay sequestered in a nearby resort. And then if you're a super fan of the show, you get to fulfill your dream of being on the show. There's no lack of people who are going to volunteer for this thing where you will be in pain. You will be in discomfort. You will be hungry. People have been medevaced out of Survivor. I don't think there's ever been an actual death on the American show, but people have died on some of the other shows, on the international ones.
Both France and Survivor Romania, people have died.
You are volunteering for real danger, and you're not getting paid a lot of money to do it. It's really good for the networks.
There's a power imbalance, right? Like one of the reasons why it's important for Hollywood to have those unions is because most people would be actors for free because like you want the exposure, right? Like there is a race to the bottom with how much you can pay people. And reality TV is a like brand new situation where there are no rules. And so you can do this race to the bottom. Any industry where people want to be in it, there is an opportunity to exploit the laborers. We talked about this in our World of Warcraft episode with game developers, but it's also very true in the entertainment industry as well.
All right. Our second theme and big idea, the end of history fascination with desert island survival.
This is something I've been thinking about for a long time. In the 1920s, there was like this fascination with ancient Egyptian aesthetics, right? People would have these ancient Egypt parties and things like that. Turn of the century, mostly like 1900, 1920. And I really feel that at the millennium, in the year 2000, there is a fascination with the aesthetics of the tropical island, the deserted island. There is something in that moment where people loved tiki torches, tiki bars. I think about the fact that Castaway was one of the highest grossing movies of this same year, right? Of the year 2000. And I wanted to do a Castaway episode one day. And I was like, oh yeah, it's probably about how at the end of history, when all you can imagine is liberal capitalism, maybe there's this fantasy of like escaping it and going back to nothing because I can't imagine anything else but capitalism. And I kind of like put this away because I was like, that's embarrassing. This is such like a fucking hack take. Just seems like obviously that's like the first thing we would say on our show. So I was like, okay, fuck that. I don't want to do that. But I watched Castaway yesterday, and that's exactly what that movie is about. Like Tom Hanks's job in Castaway is to introduce free market companies to ex-Soviet states. Like he goes to Moscow and sets up FedEx to replace the post office, and they make a big show of him installing a clock in Moscow to be like, your life is now ruled by this clock. Like you need to hurry up. You need to be efficient. No more government run anything. Like that's inefficient. And then he has to go to this island, and of course, like it's ironic because all he has is time on his hands. And remember in that movie, the thing that gives him purpose is he keeps an unopened package because he's able to still have purpose in like, oh, I have a job to do. I need to deliver this package. I'm still a FedEx man on this desert island.
Yes.
There's a scene in Castaway of them like removing a memorial of Lenin from the wall as he like teaches Russians how to be efficient.
Yeah, I cringe every time we say the phrase end of history, but it was a real feeling people felt.
Think about like Super Mario Sunshine or like Fruitiger Aqua. You know, we mentioned in our review of the movie Collateral that like Vincent keeps looking up at this picture of a tropical deserted island, right? Like there was a fascination in that moment with the idea of leaving all of this behind and starting from scratch on an island. And I honestly do think it is tied up with the concept of the end of history.
Yeah, I think if you look at some of that first boom when the actual Robinson Crusoe was written and whatnot, and Robert Louis Stevenson, it's 1600s, 1700s, age of exploration, age of empire. We're thinking about all these tropical islands and whatnot, right? And I think it's probably also tied up in the frontier. We're like running that back because there's no more frontiers. Like, what if there was something new? What if we could go back to the time where there was like literal geographic growth in the world? I think it's also tied up a little bit in that.
Yeah. And, you know, some of the details from those books were funny around this because they talk about how much time like PAs spent in that first season removing garbage that would wash up on the beach, right? Like water bottles, Barbies, like get them out of the shot, right? Those aren't real, quote unquote, right? Like, and that's so ironic to be like, remove the normal things that are happening here. Those aren't real.
Yes. We need to invent the pristine, untouched by capitalism deserted island because it doesn't exist.
Right.
The garbage is falling off the shipping lanes and washing up on this island. We need to manicure our desert island.
You know, I talked about that scene where Gretchen, after she's voted off, is leaving the Tiki Council area and she looks back and the entire tribal council setup is made out of styrofoam. Right? Like, were there not enough naturally occurring things on the national park in Indonesia to create a tribal council? No, they had to build one out of styrofoam. Like, ultimately, we don't want real. Right? We want like what in our heads we think of is real.
Oh, yeah. The best chapter, I think, of that book, Survivor and the Endless Gaze, is about how they treat locations. They need to add fake boulders to this place. They have to remove housing that exists on some of these places. Like, I don't know if they're like corrugated steel or whatever. I don't know what type of housing they're removing, but it doesn't fit with their aesthetic. It doesn't fit with what they're going for. So they remove the housing, they remove the signs of development in these places to make it look primitive. They even rent and wrangle animals to add to the island in some cases. Probably not so the first season. I think those rats and bugs and everything were actually locals, but they bring in spiders, snakes, lizards. I like to imagine they're bringing in invasive species to film their fucking game show on this island. And they kick out the native people who live there to film their fucking thing.
If you don't want like a more on the nose description of like how this show is like colonialism, they literally remove the native people sometimes. Like they get an agreement from the government to clear out the native people so that they can present this as like pristine, untouched nature.
Yeah. The world that they make is representative of how Westerners long for what the West has destroyed. What we want is like everything before Western capitalism and colonialism like ruined everything. We want the terra nullius in Latin.
And often they contribute to like kind of destroying the place they occupy, right? Like that book talked about how the American version apparently is pretty good about cleaning up the trash, but like the Turkish version of the show like left garbage all over the place. And if you're Mark Burnett, you might say like, oh, well, I don't control what these other versions of the show are doing afterwards. I can't help that. It's like, yes, but you are profiting from it, right? Like they are paying you royalties. The other big theme of Survivor is strategy. The concept of like human strategy is a fascinating through line through any of these seasons, right? Answering the questions of like, when they pitch this show, a lot of it is like, what are the human traits that will emerge in the absence of civilization, right? Like Lord of the Flies, right? What are the qualities that will win a situation like this? And I think Richard Hatch winning the first season is so perfect and on the nose because he does embody the type of like manipulation that will become the thing that everyone has to do on this show to win. It is not a meritocracy. It is not going to the most deserving person. It is not going to the best survivalist. It is going to the person who has half the votes plus one every week.
And it's interesting seeing them wrestling, especially in that first phase when they actually are teams. That's when there should be the most collaboration between people. Because if you collaborate well and you win the challenge, you don't need to vote someone off. You actually have like an incentive for collaboration. And in Survivor and the Endless Gaze, they point out that teams sometimes oscillate between going for some kind of dictatorship. Like some of the big personalities will try and make themselves the one-man leader. Never fucking works, right? They antagonize others. People don't want to listen. It's bad for the person who tries to be a leader, and it's bad for the team morale. It's bad for team efficiency. Sometimes they try and build little democracies. So the tribe is voting up or down on every little decision that they do. But the optimal tribal strategy appears to be some form of anarchism. It appears to be some kind of like a lot of individual autonomy, a lot of people doing their own thing, a lot of consensus. Seems to be the optimal political organization when they are in these individual tribes. And then once you merge, it is truly a Machiavellian free-for-all.
I was talking to a super fan of this show, and she was telling me how in the early seasons, there's this strategy often in the two tribe stage where like, yeah, if you contribute to camp, then you're probably safe. But that falls away in the later seasons. As it becomes more and more of a game, it often is like, oh yeah, he's contributing to camp, get rid of him. You know, he's useful. That's a liability. And so I find that is not in line with the things that I like about the show. And I think people in America liked about the show in the year 2000, which was like, hey, isn't it cool to watch these people try and survive together on this island, right? Like, I do wish there were a few more mechanics that rewarded cooperation.
Yeah.
And like actually building a good camp. There's a couple seasons that I wish I had watched, one of which was Gen X versus Millennials.
And remind me who won that one, Giordano?
A millennial man.
Yeah, eat shit, Gen X.
I was talking to someone who did watch that season, and they said that apparently the Gen X camp, people kind of just like immediately went to work on building the camp, and like the millennials sat down together and introduced themselves and like had
gave
sort of
their
like
pronouns.
a team bonding exercise first. Yeah, exactly. There's another season that I wish I watched. I think it's season 12, where they do like race-based tribes.
Yeah,
so there's like the white tribe, the Asian tribe, and a gentleman from the Asian tribe, Yule, actually won that season. And he credits using game theory and a lot of math to win, right? In his own words, he says he used a lot of math. And I think that, yeah, like if you can just work out a few turns ahead, how many votes you'll need and where you'll get them, and do the game theory, that is likely to be the best way to win the game, I find. All right, let's move on to our next big theme, which is Orientalism.
Oh, boy.
This is one of the most glaring things about this show is how much they portray other places in the world. Like, you know, we talked about how they couldn't make this show in America because there would be too many like labor laws. But the other reason they couldn't make the show in America is because they wouldn't be able to orientalize the setting as much because we'd be more familiar with it.
Yes, you will learn absolutely nothing about the countries and places that they go to on this show.
You'll learn things that are fake. You'll learn fake stuff, right? But
there was one season set somewhere in the South Pacific where the only history lesson they had was the island in reference to America's war in World War II. Like a lot of Marines died on this island or whatever.
Oh,
right?
wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
In that season in China, like I mentioned, I wish I would have kept a tally of how many times they say something like, you know, for this challenge, you'll have to really embody the values of Sun Tzu, of being a commander, you know? Just so much of that. You know, Confucius once said, the first season starts with them being like, Buddha thought that losing all of your possessions was valuable, which means that you're not going to be able to take any of your normal clothes to the island. You'll have to just wear your underwear or whatever. And it's like, is that really what the Buddha thought? But like, they're often just, like we said, attempting to use a like fake version of a location's mythology to build some kind of visual aesthetic and vibe to each season. From like the imagery of how the tribal council is presented, right? That'll be like tiki in the South Pacific, or like a Chinese temple in the China season, to the music they play. My God, I watched some of season 2. Every episode is like 75% of the time they are playing the didgeridoo.
Yep. If you ever played the Crash Bandicoot games and you remember the tiki masks that meant that you had an extra life, like, and it made like an inkum bokum sound effect, it is that aesthetic. I'll quote Jeff Probst. He begins the season in Vanuatu by telling us that the country has, quote, a fascinating history of cannibalism, where rituals like sorcery and black magic are still part of daily life.
Oh my God.
This is the deft cultural tone that they're taking. And then then they turn this into baubles and fetishes, like the idols that you will take and put around your neck and compete for. This totally orientalizing view of these cultures. Sometimes they even use natives as props. Like they'll have people there just chanting something or what have you on the island. It is a true colonialist fantasy world.
All the challenges in that China season are like, you have to use throwing stars or count fireworks, right? You know how many times a gong is hit in that season? You know how many times like they have to be in like one of those Chinese New Year dragons in that season? So many shots of like Confucius. There's a Chinese American woman who is playing that season, PG, one of my favorite characters in Survivor, who's really hard done by because she's such a good player, but she's from the smaller tribe, so she's eliminated. But the producers try to keep her alive through like a Chinese trivia game, which is so funny because like I think people have probably come a long way since then, but like trying to watch Americans answer Chinese trivia questions in 2007 was hysterically funny, right? Like a question like, what is usually in red envelopes presented to you on Chinese New Year's, right? Like just everybody bricking that. Right? Or like they're presented with hot pot in like one of their reward challenges, and they're like, they gave us this food, but it was all raw and you had to cook it yourself. Like one of those weird 2000s things where it's like, yeah, no one has heard of hot pot, no one has heard of Chinese New Year. Also, Courtney, you know, like the bitch that we keep talking about, the waitress from New York, one of the food challenges is you have to eat all of these like delicacies from China. Right. And so you eat like balut, for example, right, which is like a chicken embryo that like already has feathers that you have to eat whole. And it's like it's disgusting. It's very much, you have to be like a real foodie to be into that shit. But Courtney, the bitch, is like, well, you know, like unlike some others, referring to PG, the Chinese American woman, I wasn't really familiar with these foods. So it was harder for me. And it's not really fair. You know, it's like as if PG is like growing up eating balut all the time or something.
Quoting that book again, the music has gotten worse and worse over the years. It's just a sample of all sorts of world music at its worst. It's didgeridoos and synthesizers, quote, tweaked to fit the landscape and shot through with grunts, shouts, hoots, and cries meant to evoke the savage, you know?
Oh my God. But yeah, just getting back to the foods with the balut, there's always a challenge of eating gross food, right? And then the food will be food from this area that's considered a delicacy, or just like something gross and edible from around there, right? So in the Chinese one, like they eat balut and then they eat like another Chinese delicacy. I watched this season like with a friend of mine from Beijing because I wanted to get some of their commentary around the way that they like mythologized China. And the next thing they have to eat is just like turtles, just like a regular, you know, mid-sized turtle, shell and all. And she's like, no one in China would ever eat a turtle like that. It'd be funny if they just took them down. Like one of the challenges is you just have to go to the Wuhan wet market and have a pangolin, you know?
Yeah, it's crazy. They're turning people's food into a challenge because of how disgusting and gross it is. It's super Western centric. Imagine just going to some Maasai tribesmen and being like, your endurance challenge is to eat this entire plate of jalapeno poppers straight out of the air fryer or whatever. Like, it's so processed. I've never had these chemicals before. Just retching.
All right, let's move on to sex appeal. So I think this is like one of the major reasons why people watch Survivor. There's so much more sex appeal on this show than I expected. And it's so ironic, right? Because like when you are normally watching TV, attractive people become actors and they're cast in television shows. And that's, I'm sure, part of the reason why people get picked for Survivor is that they're like decent looking. But there's something about being trapped on this island with these people where like you almost feel a little trapped on the island with them. And then like, I'm so into all of these people and like the way they look. You spend a tremendous amount of time watching them like in their underwear. They're always like blurring out
nip slips,
butt cracks. Like I think there's an element of voyeurism. It's very tantalizing.
I think the appeal is that they are brought down a peg by the fact that they are quote unquote average people. They're of course selected for their looks. I don't know. I think one of the books compared it to the appeal of amateur pornography, right? These versus professional or what have you.
Exactly. When you watch TV, you're seeing someone who's made a living out of being attractive. You're seeing people in makeup, in good lighting. There is something so refreshing about seeing someone with like no makeup in like not great lighting and still being amazed by how attractive they are. I don't know. I found that this was like a big draw for the show. It was like, it's just kind of like nice to see people compete in their underwear for like all season.
And the producers choose their clothing. So there's a reason that the Survivor castaways, the women have 3 different pairs of bikinis over the course of their 39 days or whatever.
And we'd be remiss if in our theme of sex appeal, we didn't talk about Boston Raw, probably like the most famous hot player from the show. I mean, this guy made his appearance in season 4, Quesas, the season that was supposed to be in Jordan, but ended up being last minute because of September 11th being changed to the Pacific. I mean, this guy is a booyah hottie. Oh my God. Holy shit. I've heard for a lot of women, Boston Rob was one of those moments that just changed the way you approached reality TV forever. Seeing this like extremely attractive, cool guy, Boston Rob, make an appearance. Someone who would actually marry someone on the show. Amber, I think her name is. Right?
Oh,
so
sweet.
So he meets this girl on Survivor All-Stars who he forms a bond with. And then they're the final 2, right? Because they have a true loyalty to each other. They can't backstab. And then in the reunion, right before they announce the winner, he proposes to her.
Oh,
Isn't that sweet? But Boston Rob has been on the show more than anyone. He's like a professional Survivor contestant, basically, at this point. But yeah, I just think like season 15 and that one in China, like I mentioned, I think it's funny because, you know, we talked about regular people being attractive because they're regular. There's a professional wrestler, like a WWE contestant on that show. And I found that like, even though she is someone who is paid to be attractive in the real world, I was like far more attracted to the other contestants because there's something about that amateur voyeurness that like is so refreshing about this show. One of the most famous contestants on Survivor of all time is this woman Parvati, who like used her sexuality to win Survivor. They talk about this moment in the book where they get down to like the final 5, 4 women and Eric. And Eric has an immunity idol that he's going to use to get himself to the final 4. But Parvati and the 4 women start flirting with him and like they're touching with him and like telling him, no, you know, you should give up your immunity idol to us. And like, you know, we'll vote off this other person and you'll be fine. And of course, like this guy, Eric, who is overcome by the flirting, gives up his immunity idol to Parvati, and because of her beauty and her flirting, and they immediately vote him off after.
Wow.
And Jeff says, as commentary, that the life lesson here is that breasts can get you in a lot of trouble. Which sort of reminds me of a season 15. Remember, I mentioned the parkour guy, Frosty? He's a 20-year-old student. Courtney flirts with him. She's like letting him give her a massage. And she's like laying her head on his shoulder. You really get the sense that like this guy is so smitten. I mean, Courtney is very attractive. He's so smitten with Courtney. And what happens that week? Courtney votes him off. You know, there's a lot of like really interesting deception and like people using their sexuality to advance their place in the game. I find that very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, the show is obviously trying to cash in on all of this sex appeal, right? Very blatantly. And it was only very late in Survivor's run where they banned nudity from the show because of basically an instance of sexual harassment, sexual assault from this guy, Dan. Dan, who was literally kicked off the show just via title cards because he was grinding up against other women and also allegedly groped a member of the crew. And so they are really playing with fire with their like exploitative sexuality that they're trying to encourage, and it has led to sexual misconduct that they've had to do. But this is so baked into the show that Jeff Probst once, in like a listicle of his favorite moments of Survivor, listed in his top 10 a time that 2 female contestants took off their tops back in the day. But there was a Me Too reckoning on Survivor.
There's a moment in Survivor China where they trick them into only taking the clothes that they like were wearing that day to this Chinese ceremony. And one of the women is like, but I don't have a bra. And Jeff's like, well, that's going to make you really popular on the island. Like, I think they're intentionally trying to trick you as well into like not having appropriate clothing. You know, there's a mud wrestling challenge where people are ripping each other's clothes off that season. You know? All right, well, let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
So echoes in the culture. All right, everybody's favorite section. You know we wouldn't get out of here without a quick echoes in the culture. I mean, we've been talking about this whole time. The echo in the culture here is reality television is like the dominant form of media that we have now. Right? Probably more reality TV shows are greenlit every year than any other form of television production.
Yep.
I mean, if you love Love is Blind or Love Island, you thank Survivor.
Yep.
Or Donald Trump.
And yeah, obviously it wasn't completely new. Like, don't at us with fucking Real World or whatever. There were precursors to Survivor, but it's hard to stress how much it broke out in the 2000s, and Survivor is a huge part of that, which in turn has all these other knock-on effects on the culture. Like the rise of Donald Trump is very real, which we'll talk about in 2 weeks. And I mean, I found this story crazy where like the phenomenon of texting was disseminated partially through something like American Idol, where the AT&T spokesman said that the show American Idol had done more to educate the public and get people texting than their own marketing ever could.
Wow.
Which in terms of a knock-on real-world effect. Post-Survivor, as of 2021, there are more than 700 reality TV shows being produced around the world. Big Brother has hundreds of seasons in more than 50 countries. And there's just an enormous diversity of reality TV. So you have the entire Real Housewives empire, right? That's your real life soap opera. You got your talent competitions, your voices, your America's Got Talent, your singing and dancing. In the Arabic world, there's one called the Holy Quran Caravan, which is a Quran reciting competition. Winners voted by the audience. You got your travel game shows and competitions, your amazing races. And now we've even come full circle from the conniving, backstabbing, Machiavellian Survivor. We have these reality shows that are built around goodwill and being nice, like all of your bake-off shows or the Lego Masters that are just meant to be soothing and nice in our anxious time. I gotta shout out the Arabic world again. There's apparently a reality show called Greenlight in which contestants compete to do good deeds.
In terms of the knock-on effects, you remember in The Office when we were like flabbergasted at the fact that there were 14 versions of The Office around the world, right? That is chump change compared to Survivor. There are over 40 international versions of Survivor. Over 230 seasons altogether. There are like national ones like Survivor Sweden, which is in its 27th season and actually started before the American one. Survivor Romania, Survivor Lebanon. There are also like regional versions like Survivor Balkans, which includes, you know, Serbians and Croatians. Which, by the way, Serbia and Croatian also have their own national versions. So it's like, in addition to that, they also have a regional version.
Wow.
I was looking at some of the voting from the first season, and it did look like the Serbians had ganged up to eliminate the Croatian players. They just can't help it. You know, these islands are always a microcosm for human behavior at large.
The Marquesas have always been part of Greater Serbia, Giordano. I don't know what you're talking about.
There's also subnational versions like Survivor Quebec.
Nice.
Can you imagine Survivor Quebec? Like, every challenge is circus tricks. You know, they keep trying to get sap from the palm trees. They keep doing just for laugh gag on each other, you know. I want to win $1 million there.
Yeah, I was just imagining it would be like the world's first cold weather Survivor. So there's no sex appeal because everyone's wearing parkas out in the Gaspésie or somewhere.
Yeah, or it's like a tropical island, which to people from Quebec is just like Baltimore or something. There's a Tamil version of the show for people in India. You know, because India has its own Hindi version of the show. So sometimes like a country will have multiple for its own subnational version. Like, I can't think of another show that has this level of recreation around the world.
It's cheap, it's cruel, it's exploitative, and we love it.
Mike White also got famous largely from being on Survivor. I think Jeff Probst had said that Mike White is his favorite contestant of all time.
Wow.
So if you like The White Lotus. And yeah, you think about some of the catchphrases that entered the culture from this show. Things like "the tribe has spoken" or Sue's rat and snake speech, which almost certainly was put in there from a producer. But you'd constantly see this show mentioned as a cultural reference in the era, right? Remember seeing t-shirts referencing Survivor, or like, you know, the Curb Your Enthusiasm thing we played up top, or like that very funny Daniel Tosh bit about going to a place where people already live and surviving. Even The Sopranos has a Survivor reference.
This is a Survivor show. Somebody should find the winner, stick a pistol in the face, and say, "You're not gonna survive this unless you give me 25% of that fucking $1 million."
That's not bad. And we can find out where they live.
See how good you survive this, piezzemer.
One quick echo in the culture in terms of the labor involved here and how it got to be innovated. Einhorn was one of the camera operators on season 1, and he kind of gets disillusioned with the fakeness of the show as it goes on, and so he leaves. And he's someone who is hired by Greg Daniels to work on The Office because of his experience working with reality TV and confessionals and help to make The Office feel like a real reality TV show.
Nice.
So, closing thoughts. I think we've talked a lot about how the nature of reality TV and how it mimics reality, obviously, but it isn't real. Right? The book had all these situations where they described how the producers often tell players who they want you to vote for. Or so many times in the confessionals, they're clearly priming you for a response because the contestant will say the question back to them before they answer. How do I feel about Sean backstabbing me or whatever, right? You have to take this as entertainment. It's not real. I don't think it's that high-minded of art. But I think about that moment in season 1 a lot with Sean, who wanted the game to be about a meritocracy. And he had an opportunity to eliminate the player playing as a predator, and he doesn't take it because he's naive. Right. And I think that is kind of a nice microcosm sometimes, for the way that business can work. Let's say you want to do business ethically. Can you do that in a world where someone can take advantage of your ethics and run you out of business using this code of conduct that you have? I thought that was an interesting microcosm for the real world. So that's kind of my closing thoughts.
Yeah, it was way better than I thought it would be. I understand the appeal. I don't think I'm going to become a Survivor head, but yeah, it combines so many things that we like into this one unique form. It has the interpersonal drama of a soap opera. It has the contest elements of a game show, or even a sporting event, if we're being honest. I did get big NFL vibes when we talk about the fandom and the metrics and all of that. And then it also has this fun, interesting survival angle with the exoticism, kind of seeing new fake worlds and what have you. I think it's this very multifaceted appeal, and I see why people like it. Like I said up at the top of the show, if you find human beings interesting, this is some of the best fucking people watching there is. Because of the setting, because of the types of people that they choose, and because of the game mechanics that are like the unethical psychological experiments that they ran in the 50s and 60s. Like the Stanford prison experiment, or the one where the guy in the lab coat tells you to administer shocks until the actor pretends to die. It's like that. It's watching these people get tortured and seeing how they respond. It truly does contain multitudes.
There's so many things to enjoy here. It's shot very well, very dynamic. The people who put it together clearly care about the craft, you know, the shots of the animals. They hire locals to redo the challenge so they can pretend to have helicopter coverage of it in that first season. And these are people who cared about putting this together. And like I said, there's so many things to appreciate here. Like putting yourself in the shoes of the contestants and imagining what would I do here? What is the dominant strategy, right? That is inherently interesting. Seeing how hard it is for these people to survive on a desert island is, of course, also just a naturally interesting proposition. Everyone's thought about it, right? Imagine sleeping at night on bamboo, surrounded by other people, getting bit by bugs. Colleen in that first season, America's Sweetheart, a bunch of bugs lay eggs in her skin, on her legs and feet.
God damn.
There is an element of getting to enjoy this experience without actually having to do it that was fascinating to people in the year 2000.
Yeah. All right. I think that's all we got for you today. Thank you so much for listening. This has been a fun one. This has been a long one. As always, please please subscribe, write us a comment, engage, and watch this space for our second deep dive into reality TV.
Yeah, we're going to cover a show that was much harder to watch next week, but obviously much more important for the state of the world. Ben and I will be back in our next episode, our 100th episode, to talk about The Apprentice, where Mark Burnett imagines the business world, that's something of a jungle.
So fucking true, dude.
So watch this space, follow us on Instagram. Ben and I, we'd love to see your comments. It's our favorite thing in the world. So thank you for listening to the show. And the pod is spoken. We'll catch you later.
Peace.
Peace.